in which we view ourselves, view our history, view our religiosity, shape our political behavior. Very simple. If you look at voting statistics dating back 100 years, with the exception of African Americans, there is not a singular group of voters who is more consistent in voting for the Democrats than American Jews. Why? Remember what we said about building coalitions that allow those on the margin to fit into the mainstream? Ever since the days of Roosevelt, the Roosevelt coalition, which initially was, ethnic white immigrants, right, and African Americans, allowed Jews to take center stage in American politics, and they were really welcomed in the Democratic Party. Again, it's amazing. No matter who's running, Jews will vote, American Jews will vote somewhere between 60 to 80% for that candidate automatically. Again, only African Americans are even close in this kind of party loyalty. And you see it even with the Harris, just like every other group. You had in the last election, a lot of people, the Latinos and even African American males voted for Trump. And yes, some Jews abandoned the Democrats in the last election, voted for Trump, but the vast majority still voted for Kamala Harris, right? Even Barack Hussein Obama, first time he ran, look at this, it's incredible, 80%, 78%. Second time, not as well, but this is really important. Why? Because American Jews are important blocks in the democratic liberal coalition. And this really shapes the relationship with the state of Israel, a nation that is becoming more religious, more right-winged, more conservative with every year that passes. And we argue in the book that not only the sociological differences between the two groups are important to the relationship, but also the political leanings, the political ideology. After October 7th, the American Jewish community supported the state of Israel in the most amazing way possible. The money, the support, the heartfelt support, Israel couldn't survive without that. It was authentic, it was meaningful, it was appreciated, it was absolutely great. But, ladies and gentlemen, as you look at the future of American-Jewish relationship between American Jews and Israel, Houston, we have a problem. What we can see is that younger people, the younger you are, the more liberal you are, the less religious you are, the more negative your views are of the state of Israel. And it's easy to understand, because if you're young and liberal and not religious, you're going to have a problem with a nation that has the Star of David on its flag along with the Talit. National religious country, in sense of identity, is inconsistent with the values of the left, especially of the progressive left. And we see exactly who are the people who are pushing anti-Israeli campaigns. It's really, to not give Israel arms and boycott this and boycott that. It's coming from the left these days. American Jews, like most Democrats, gather news from left-leaning media sources. I don't know if you noticed, the New York Times is not exactly the biggest fan of Benjamin Netanyahu. Have you noticed that? And one more thing, the West Bank, also known as Judea and Samar, right? Yehuda and Shomron. For a lot of American Jews, the story of the Palestinian occupation is a thorn on their side that really makes it difficult for them to support Israel publicly and sociologically, because they run around, their friends are also Democrats, and their friends are supporting social justice movements and supporting the weak, like Jews have always done. How can we support David when we're viewed as Goliath? Very problematic. What do American Jews want? Those who are Democrats, especially progressive, they want Israel to look the same way they want the United States to look. A melting pot where everybody gets along well. where Jews and Christians and live together in harmony, where the LGBTQ is fully expressed, where Judaism looks, again, like their version of Judaism, with a female rabbi who leads mixed congregations with Jews and non-Jews. No problem. This is not what the people of Israel want. And if you look at Jewish vote in Israel for the last 30, 40 years, Israel is more conservative, more traditional, more to the right. So again, we have different political sociology between the groups. I want to talk about a topic that must be spoken about, because I think there's a real crisis within the American Jewish liberal circles right now. You can't speak about progressive politics in the United States without speaking about the Jews, right? I mean, from women's suffrage to civil rights, to gay rights, to trans rights, any rights you want, labor rights, American Jews have been at the heart of the social justice movement in the United States always, right? I mean, who walked with Martin Luther King on the bridge, right? At Selma, it was the rabbi over there. Something bad is happening in the progressive left. Suddenly, for the first time, you've seen this right around the start of Black Lives Matters, but even worse right now after October 7th. Unlike any other student group on campus, a student from Syria, a student from Yemen, nobody's asked to justify the behavior of their home nation. But in many social justice organizations, in many left-leaning student organizations around California and the Northeast, American Jews, for the first time, have to pass a litmus test. And it's very simple. They say to them, look, you can't be a part of the gay rights movement on campus if you support Zionism. You can't support Black Lives Matter if you support Zionism. Zionism, do you remember when Zionism, the UN, we speak about this in the book, remember when the UN said that Zionism is racism? And it was, it was Patrick Daniel Moynihan who stood on the stage and rebuked that notion as anti-Semitic. Well, what he rebuked on the stage of UN is now taught in college campuses all around the United States. Often by American Jewish professors, but it's a different story. This is a real problem. I know that everybody's trained to think that anti-Semitism in America comes from the right. But the new anti-Semitism is coming from the left. It's coming from intelligentsia, it's coming from academic circles, it's coming from the traditional centers of power of the progressive left, the far left. This is going to be a real problem for Jews because the left is a natural home of American Jews, and they want to be a part of it. And suddenly, the relationship with Israel makes it problematic to them. They can no longer be a part of the group they wanted to. They're being kicked out of the coalition. So this is putting even more tension on the relationship between American Jews and Israel. And then don't forget, Israelis are watching the American Jews. And they're asking, wait a second, are you guys nuts? Right? Jews for Palestine. Are you nuts? I want to talk about one group that I don't think is fully understood by the American Jewish community. And that is the evangelical Christian world. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at, we're talking about anti-Semitism on college campuses, the BDS movement, right? Anti-Israel rhetoric in Congress, in Washington. Who's fighting against us? Evangelical Christians. In 13 anti-BDS legislations passed, I think it's even higher now, it wasn't American Jews who were at the forefront of passing these legislations. It was evangelical Christians. When you look at Congress and you look at October 7th and the reaction, it wasn't Chuck Schumer who stood in Columbia and stood against the university and what they did to the students, the Jewish students on campus. You know who it was? Representative Johnson, Speaker of the House. The evangelical Christian world loves the Jews. Now, why they love the Jews, we'll talk about in a second. But The evangelical world loves the Jews. It's not that they love Israel only. They love Israel, but they love the American Jewish people. And every time I speak to evangelicals, the first question is, so chapter 14, I think, 15, why do Christian Zionists love Israel, or the Jews? And the next chapter is, why do American Jews distrust evangelical Christians? Now, if I asked everybody here in the audience, I would probably hear about Armageddon, and the fact that they all want to convert us, and they want to bring the big war, and Jesus will come back, and all of that. They disagree with that notion. I'm going to argue a much more simple, I'm going to offer a more simple explanation. American Jews distrust evangelical Christians for the same reason American Jews distrust Trump supporters. They're simply on the opposite side of most political issues. American Jews, if you look at any social issues, are to the left, and evangelical Christians to the right. They're political opponents. That's why they mistrust them in a way. But ladies and gentlemen, this is such a missed opportunity. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, evangelicals, they only support Netanyahu and the settlers and all of that. Look at their money. Where is it going? Is it all going to settlements? No. You know where evangelical money is going to Israel? It's big money every year, not even close to American Jews, but pretty substantial. It goes to welfare and social programs and ambulances for the IDF and development towns all around Israel. The reason why evangelical Christians love Israel is for a simple reason. There's a verse that says, those who will bless the Jews will be blessed, and those who will curse the Jews will be cursed. It's theological. One more difference. When American Jews hear about the occupation or violence in the West Bank, they hear about cities like Bethlehem and Jericho and Shechem, Nablus, right? And Beth El and all these. American Jews don't know these places. It's not a part of their everyday lives because most American Jews are not very religious. We'll talk about religiosity in a second. American Jews have some of the highest levels of, sorry, I don't want to say backwards. They have very low religiosity levels. Atheists, non-affiliated, right? So when they hear about events happening in Bethlehem, it means nothing to them. When they hear the Palestinian narrative saying, we are the natives, well, they don't know. Bethlehem? Where is that? Is that in France? So yeah, the Arabs are the victim. They are the native brown people, the native, and the Jews are the colonial Europeans who came there. But when Christians read about something that happened in Bethlehem or Beth El, right? They know the land, they know the names, because they read the Bible every single day. The story of the Jewish people and their deep, long-held relationship with the land of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, King David didn't live in Tel Aviv. Okay? He lived in what some people would call the West Bank, the occupied territories. Okay? That's where the Jews lived for many years, in the old Jewish kingdoms. So this relationship with evangelicals is very problematic for many people in the American Jewish community. When people want to criticize Donald Trump, they often refer to his supporters as Christian nationalists. When people want to criticize Netanyahu, and I chose a bad picture on purpose because they're critics, they want to categorize his supporters as national religious. The problem with the state of Israel is that in the big argument that's happening in the West, on one hand, globalization that says, look, anybody can move to France and you're just as French as somebody who lived here 300 years. And if you say anything otherwise, you get in trouble. In England, if you tweet that, you'll be arrested. Globalization replaces the Italian lira and the French franc with the euro. There is no national identity, there is European identity. We're replacing national, religious, ethnic identity with a common one. And that's what emancipation does. It says we're all Italians, we're all French, we're all Dutch. But the other side, and you see this, we had the German elections, the French elections, the Dutch elections, the Italian elections, Swedish elections. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a reason why there's a Czech Republic and Slovakia Republic, and it's not just Czechoslovakia. There is a reason why there is Finland, Sweden, and Norway, and not a country called Scandinavia. There is something about humans that yearns for a separate identity. It's called social identity theory. There are only 10,000 studies in social psychology proving that in-group and out-group dynamics is how we define who we are. So in the great battle that's happening right now in the West, there's a battle between globalization and nationalism. It's happening in Europe right now. It's happening all around the country right now. One candidate wants to close all the borders, while the other one wants to open all the borders. And it's happening within Israel right now, where there is the Tel Aviv versus the Jerusalem movements. One looks to the future and one looks to the past. Who's going to win? Let's talk about the future.